Lyra was giddy, and about a moment away from bursting into giggles as she walked out of the hospital. She pressed her palms to her blushing cheeks, feeling their warmth. Being on cloud nine, she did not notice Zero until he called her name. She dropped her hands instantly and fixed her expression. Zero walked up to her and came to a stop, watching her with an assessing gaze. "Lyra," he said in greeting. "It's been a while." Indeed, it had been a while. The last time she had seen him was that day when he pretended to kiss her in class. She had since found out that he had been confined under the king's orders, and she knew it was because of her. "Hi," she replied. "I'm sorry about what happened the other day. The king shouldn't have taken it out on you." Zero shook his head, a slight frown forming on his brow. "I don't care what he does to me, as long as he doesn't make you suffer." He stepped closer to her. "You know you can rely on me, right?" Lyra was grateful that Zero had stood up for her. But she did not wish for him to keep doing so at his own detriment. Also, she did not want him to keep coming between her and Julian. It only made things difficult for everyone involved. "I want you to stop," she told him, looking into his eyes. "You know that Julian is my mate, right?" Zero's jaw ticked, and he remained silent, but he nodded. It was a fact he wished was not true, but of which he could do nothing about. "It's best if you stop doing anything for me," she told him. "It's not good for either of us." Zero's face adopted a troubled look. "How can I do nothing? I've seen how he treats you. You are his mate, but he does not treasure you. I can't just watch and do nothing." "You can," she said firmly, "because it has nothing to do with you. I'm not your mate, Alpha Zero. And what happens between me and Julian is none of your business. It's not your job to watch over me or interfere with what happens in my personal life." Zero shook his head, thrown off by her tone. Before, when she warned him against interfering, he could tell it was because she was worried about him. And when she looked at him, he could see the gratitude and admiration in her eyes. But now her attitude towards him was almost hostile. She made it sound as if he was bothering her, as if he was nothing but a nuisance to her. "Did he threaten you?" he asked her, because he couldn't think of any other reason she would suddenly act like that. Julian must have threatened her about him, and she was doing her best to push him away. "You don't have to be afraid of him. I can." "No," she denied firmly. "He has actually been very nice to me lately. Things are good between us, and I don't want you to ruin it." "Is he going to let everyone know that you are his mate?" Zero asked her. Lyra hesitated. That was a good question, if it was even one. Even if Julian had sent Crystal out of the palace, they were still engaged. Julian might have been nice to her lately, but whether or not he wanted people to know that Lyra was his mate was another matter altogether. "He won't. And you know it," Zero continued when she said nothing. "He is too proud and would never admit that a lowly Omega is his mate. He thinks you are too weak to be the queen of this kingdom. If he can't accept you on those terms, how exactly can he be a mate to you? Will he keep you by his side while he marries another she-wolf and makes her his queen and official mate? Is that what you think of me?" Lyra asked, sounding hurt. "That I'm weak and lowly?" "No," Zero replied. "I think you are brave and amazing, and I don't care about your status or background. If you accepted me, I would go against anything and anyone to be with you. You are more important to me than anything else. If you met your mate, you would forget me in a heartbeat," she told him, a bitter note in her voice. It's not that she doubted his sincerity about his feelings, but it was the truth. The mate bond was incomparable to anything else. "So maybe you should not be here telling me to abandon my own mate." "I do not believe I would do that," Zero said. "Hasn't Julian shown that it's quite possible to shun one's mate? If the bond was so effective, how come it's not enough to make him accept you wholeheartedly?" It's not stopping him from looking for a queen among other females, is it? Lyra hated how right he was. He didn't know, but he was shattering every little hope that had begun rising inside her recently. She almost hated him for it. Do not forget, he is the one person who has treated you with respect and kindness since you came to the palace. Ray, sensing her souring mood, reminded her. Don't be so harsh on him. Am I required to pay for his kindness by choosing him then? Lyra snapped back. Chill, Ray said. I'm just saying you should remember he is not your enemy. Don't get so defensive. Look, I know the sex with Julian is very good, but remember that before he blinded you with his cock, you seemed to think that Zero was your dream mate. Annoyed by Ray's words, Lyra shut off the connection between them. How dare she suggest that she was basing her thoughts and feelings on sex? It wasn't about that. Julian had genuinely been nice to her, and she did not want to do anything that would make him go back to treating her with hostility. But she agreed with one thing. Zero was not the enemy. He wanted the best for her, but she wanted him to stop meddling in her affairs. After everything he had done for her, he did not deserve her harshness. But she needed him to stop thinking that he had a chance with her. I'm really grateful for everything you have done for me so far, she told him. But I have no feelings for you. It does not matter whether Julian accepts me or not. The fact remains that I don't love you, and I never will. If you keep trying like this, it'll only hurt us both. Hurt flashed through Zero's eyes, dimming the light in them. She had been trying to not be harsh, but was there anything that could hurt him more than telling him that she could never return his feelings? I'm really sorry, she told him. She had never wanted to make him sad, but he looked like she had thrown a bucket of water on him. It was hard to see him like that. I'll see you around. He did not stop her as she walked past him and went on her way. She took it as a good sign. Maybe this time he would accept her rejection. And, see, the next day in class, Lyra was glad to find out that Victoria had not only recovered, but that she was also not bothering her. She tried not to be distracted by what had happened with Zero and put all her focus in her classes. Even though she had some catching up to do, she was still able to perform well and was not so badly off compared to her classmates. She, like everyone else, was surprised at her level of performance. Even though she had always been determined, she had not been ignorant of her limitations. But with every class, she proved that she was capable of so much more than she had dared dream of. This boosted her confidence in her abilities, and made her even more eager to learn. A week later, the class had an assessment where students were paired off for one-on-one combat practice. Lyra was paired with Beryl, and even though Lyra had proven to be quite good for an Omega, everybody expected Beryl to win. To their surprise, however, Lyra was able to stop most of Beryl's attacks and deliver some good offensive strikes herself. You are really good, Beryl commended her after the match, her eyes filled with awe. How are you so quick on your feet? You had me dizzy for a moment there. I've never seen Beryl lose so badly, one of their classmates commented. That was unexpected. You proved everyone wrong, someone else said. Congrats. A lot more of her classmates offered their congratulations, which Lyra found overwhelming. It was the first time so many of them had shown clear admiration of her skills, about her being so fast on her feet. Well, maybe that had something to do with her mental control skills. Lyra had not expected them to be so good, given her rank. But surprisingly, she had found that they worked just fine in slowing down Beryl's reflexes. Having such powerful mental control was unheard of in Omegas, while her performance in various classes had proven that she was way better than most Omegas. Her mental control capability was what baffled her the most. Knowing it was unordinary for an Omega to display such strength, she said nothing about it. It was best to not raise suspicions or speculations, especially since she herself could not fully understand the source of her power. As her classmates bombarded her with questions about her strategy and techniques, Julian arrived in the training arena. Chapter 36. The King's Decree. On seeing Julian, Beryl broke away from the crowd of students and approached him. "What's going on there?" Julian asked, studying the group around Lyra. His first worry had been that they were ganging up against her. But the looks on their faces and Lyra's suggested otherwise. "Lyra just beat my ass in one-on-one combat," Beryl told him. "Everyone's surprised." Julian frowned. "Really? Did you let her win?" Beryl shook her head. "Hell no. I know how serious she is about this, and she would hate me if I did something like that. I'm kidding you not. She beat me fair and square. You can ask the teacher or everyone in here. I definitely wasn't pulling my punches." "That's impossible," Julian said. "She is just an Omega," Beryl shrugged. "An Omega who has proven to be more than capable of keeping up with this bunch of elites from all over the kingdom. Don't underestimate her, Your Majesty." The teacher who was in charge of the class, Frank, approached the king. "It's an honor to have you do a personal inspection of this class. We were just getting started. Is it true what I'm hearing about Miss Jenkins?" Julian asked. "What is your assessment of her performance?" "Miss Jenkins has surpassed my expectations," Frank reported. "I thought I would have to make special considerations on account of her rank, but throughout my classes, she has shown that she is capable of competing with her classmates. Her opponent for this test was Miss Beaver, and despite the difference in their rank, Miss Jenkins came out the winner." Julian's eyes moved on to Lyra, who was watching him. As soon as their eyes met, she looked away and pretended to be absorbed with something else. "That's interesting," he mumbled. "It's interesting indeed," Beryl agreed. "Now that I think of it, maybe we don't know the true strength of Omegas since they have never been allowed to join training programs. If Lyra's case is anything to go by, I think many others like her could have untapped potential. Maybe it's time we changed how things ran around here." Julian lifted an eyebrow at her. "What are you suggesting?" "Lyra being able to defeat higher-ranked werewolves can be an encouragement for other Omegas to start training and build their strength," she said. "Many Omegas think they are incapable, and our laws have not helped prove otherwise. Would it not be a good thing if every Omega got a chance to unearth their hidden potential? It would strengthen our packs, and the kingdom in general." Thinking about it, Julian could agree that Beryl was right. As the lowest rank, nobody expected much from Omegas. They were not physically strong or powerful like other ranks, so they were excluded from all important sectors in the kingdom. Omegas existed to serve others, and were not allowed to pursue the same interests as other ranks. Since this had been the norm since the beginning, there had never been a time when Omegas had gotten the opportunity to fit into other sectors. Lyra joining the royal training camp had been a fluke, but it was turning to be an eye-opener. What if more Omegas joined such training programs? Could more of them actually fight against werewolves of higher rankings? As the Lycan King, he could not ignore such a possibility, as it would make the kingdom even stronger. "You are right," he told Beryl. "We cannot sit on such potential." He turned to the palace official who had followed him to the arena. "Publish a royal decree requiring all packs to allow Omegas to join their training programs effective immediately." A murmur rose among the shocked students. Lyra could not believe her ears. A royal decree was final and mandatory. Any alpha who disobeyed would face the wrath of the Lycan King himself. With a few words, Julian had changed such a huge part of Omegas' lives. "Yes, Your Majesty," the palace official said, jotting down on her tablet. Julian's eyes found Lyra. This time, she did not look away. She was simply too awed to be self-conscious. Also, I'm establishing a scholarship in Lyra Jenkins's name to support Omegas who wish to pursue extensive training. Note that I'm also abolishing any and all laws that forbid Omegas from attending schools everywhere in the kingdom. Yes, Your Majesty, the official replied again. Lyra was not sure she was still breathing. A scholarship in her name. She never could have foreseen anything like that happening, but that was not what stole her breath. It was the thought of what such a scholarship would mean to her fellow Omegas. Most Omegas could not afford to attend school even if they were allowed. Such a scholarship would mean that poverty would not deny them the opportunity to study like others, and abolishing the laws that kept Omegas from going to school. It all felt too good to be true, but Julian was the Lycan King and had decreed it. So, it would be. She really felt like she was dreaming. Lyra blinked when Beryl appeared in front of her and took her hands. Are you crying? Beryl asked, a big smile on her face. Lyra blinked again. What? She laughed. Am I? Maybe she was. She was so happy that she was having an out-of-body experience. Well, it looks like you are about to, Beryl said. Congratulations, you have changed history all by yourself. Lyra shook her head. No, that was you. Thank you for suggesting that to the king. I can't believe he agreed. He did, and only because you proved that Omegas are capable of so much more than we ever imagined. You should be proud of yourself. It was hard to imagine that she really was the reason for such a humongous change. She would be eternally grateful to Beryl, and to Julian. He clearly wasn't as bad as he had come off in the beginning. If he really despised Omegas, he would never make such new laws in their favor. Yay! Ray cheered excitedly. I told you, didn't I? I said you would change everything, and here you are doing it. Do you believe me now? For once, Lyra could not argue with Ray's overenthusiasm. This did feel like everything. There was a lot of prejudice and discrimination against Omegas, and that would not change overnight. In fact, the king's new laws might increase the animosity against them from other ranks who thought Omegas did not deserve the same things as they did. But despite all that, Lyra knew that the new laws could change everything. They were the first step in the right direction, and as time went by, they would hopefully become the norm. A little, she teased Ray. Back in the Red Moon Pack, Alpha Devon received the king's new decree with a deep sneer. As if the orders were not ridiculous enough, they somehow involved Lyra Jenkins. Lyra, how on earth could such a spineless, weak, useless, worthless Omega make the Lycan King change pack laws? Devon had not expected that she would survive in the palace. But it turned out that not only had she survived, but she was doing so well that she was capable of influencing the king. The king, the little witch, he cursed, pacing with the new document crumpled in his hand. She must be fucking him and whispering nonsense to him. I never thought the mighty Lycan King would allow himself to be controlled by a common whore. Thinking about that, he started to worry about what other things she might be telling the king. Yes, he had threatened her with her parents' belongings, but if the king believed her story and decided to punish Devon, what could he do? But since the king had not taken any disciplinary action against him, Devon chose to assume that Lyra had not said anything. And if she had not, that meant he still had a chance to improve things for his pack. His pack no longer enjoyed a close relationship with the palace. But since Lyra was so close to the king, he could use her to regain the Lycan King's favor. He only had to play his cards right. Lyra had just woken up when there was a soft knock on her door. She padded to the door and opened it. On the other side was a maid carrying a tray full of breakfast goodies. Tracy? Lyra asked, confused. Good morning, Lyra, Tracy replied enthusiastically. Here's your breakfast. Can I put it inside? Lyra blinked and stepped aside. Sure. Tracy smiled and walked past her. Lyra shut the door and went after her. This had recently become the norm, the maids delivering her breakfast to her room. "You don't have to do this," Lyra told Tracy, as she had told many others countless times before. Ever since everybody knew she was the reason the king changed the laws concerning omegas, she had been receiving such treatment. The servants around the palace treated her like their personal hero, serving her like royalty. "I don't mind," Tracy said, carefully arranging the breakfast on the table in Lyra's room. "You have to go to school on time, so you can't waste time going to the dining room. Can I draw your bath while you have breakfast?" No, Lyra declined. "I'll just take a shower. There's no time for a bath in the morning. Of course, silly me. Is there anything else I can do for you?" "No, thanks. Thank you for the breakfast. This is the least I can do," Tracy told her. "You have no idea how much you've changed our lives. My little siblings are so happy to go to school. They wake Mum so early, wanting to get ready long before it's time. I'm really grateful for what you did. It is all thanks to the king's grace." "Not me," Lyra said. "I'm happy to hear your siblings love school. Yes, it's the king's order, but it wouldn't have happened without you. You are our hero." Tracy's eyes were shining with adoration and admiration. "I won't bother you any longer. Have a good day at school." Lyra gave a nod. "Thanks, have a good day too." After Tracy left the room, Lyra picked up her fresh mug of coffee and moved to the window. It was a beautiful sunny morning. Everything felt surreal. She was not used to this new treatment. She had thought the attention would wane after the first few days. But it had been weeks already. Not only was her social life going well, but so was school and her relationship with Julian too. That was, if she could call it a relationship. He had not found any fault in her in weeks, and when they were together, he treated her well. It was the first time in her life since before her pack was wiped out that everything seemed to be going well for her. After eating breakfast and taking a shower, she left for school. A few of her classmates joined her on the way, chatting with her. It was a stark difference from when she used to walk to school alone, or when only a few of the students interacted with her. That evening after her last class, she went to the teacher's lounge to deliver a due assignment. She was about to walk through the door when she caught sight of Julian inside the lounge. Surprised, she took a step back. It had been more than a week since they had last been together. Seeing him, she felt anxious all of a sudden. Could she ask him to hang out? He was her mate, but he was also the Lycan King. She missed him, but she could not just walk up to him and tell him that. "What are you overthinking about?" Ray asked her. "Seduce him." "Shut up," Lyra grumbled. "No, seriously," Ray said. "We both know he can't resist you." Lyra's teeth worried her lip. "I don't want him to think that you want to have sex with your mate." Ray jumped in. "Yeah, that's unheard of. You are not helping." Lyra chided. "Are you going to pretend that you don't lay in bed every night wishing he'll show up at your door?" Ray questioned. "I didn't say I don't," Lyra argued. "Stop being a coward then. And get in there and work your magic." Lyra snickered. "What magic? Didn't he say that you have a magic pussy last time?" "Ray, what?" she asked innocently. Lyra facepalmed. "Just shut up, let me think." Before Lyra could start thinking, however, Beryl's voice came from inside the lounge. "So are you really going ahead with the engagement party?" "Yes," Julian replied. Lyra frowned. "Engagement party? I thought you'd ditch her after you chased her from the palace." "Do you really want to marry Crystal Black? I don't think she is your type." "What do you know about my type?" Julian shot back. "Lyra doesn't know about it yet, does she?" Beryl asked. The room was silent for several seconds. Then, in an annoyed tone, Julian said, "Do you have the information I want or not? I did not come here to have pointless gossip with you." Lyra's heart crashed to her stomach. She had not heard anything about an engagement party. So he was still going ahead with that. Yet here she was, acting like a lovesick fool, forgetting all about her assignment. She turned and left the building. As she walked away from the school, she came across Victoria. Since the incident in the forest, their relationship had been cordial. They weren't exactly friends, but they also weren't rivals. So she was surprised when Victoria stopped her. "Hey Lyra, can I have a word with you?" Lyra tucked away her heartbreak and nodded. "Yeah, sure." Victress clasped her hands in front of her chest. "I want to say thank you for saving my life that day. I don't think I ever properly thanked you." "No problem," Lyra told her. "I'm glad you came out okay, since you saved my life. You have the support of my pack if you ever need it," Victoria told her. Lyra shook her head. "That's not really necessary." "It is," Victoria insisted. "What other better way could I repay you?" Lyra could not think of any circumstance whereby she would need a pack's support. But her life was full of twists, so who knew? Maybe she would find herself thrown out of the palace and in need of a new place to call home. "All right, thank you," she told Victoria. "I appreciate it." When she went back to her room, she lay on the bed feeling sorry for herself. She could not understand Julian. She had been stupid for thinking she knew what was going on between them. He had actually started treating her like his mate, but it turned out that it meant nothing. She recalled Zero's words. As long as Julian was hiding her and not claiming her as his queen, could she really say she was his mate? Even though things were all right between them, he was still going ahead with his plans to marry Crystal. But he had told her, hadn't he? He would get a queen. But she would be his mistress. She had not thought about those words in so long, because they no longer seemed to be what he intended. But lying there, she felt that he still meant every word he had said. It did not matter how good their relationship was. At the end of the day, he did not think she was fit enough to stand by his side. Her phone pinged, interrupting her depressing thoughts. It was a message from Beryl, reminding that the three of them, with Zero, would meet later that evening to discuss the upcoming final test, leading to graduation. The teacher had divided the class into groups of 3, and they would be competing against others for the top prize at the end of the training program. Lyra had been excited about the competition and graduation. But she could not feel any of that happiness in that moment. The final task before graduation that Lyra was taking part in alongside Beryl and Zero was a treasure hunt event to retrieve hidden flags. There were a few flags around the royal forest, and each would be contested by 3 groups. During the event, the students were forbidden from shifting into their wolf forms. The task was designed to test their resilience, teamwork, and stamina. Lyra was determined to get the flag and win first place with her teammates. She wanted to prove Julian and anyone else who shared his way of thinking wrong. She was not useless. She had proven that she could go against the elites of the kingdom and hold her own. He could go for the female with the bluest of blood to be his queen, but she would not let his treatment put her down. She was capable and strong and did not deserve to be in the shadows. She could shine just fine. "What's that look on your face?" Beryl asked, coming from the side. "Are you trying to scare our opponents before we even begin?" Lyra looked at her friend and cracked a smile. She had not realized that her inner turmoil was showing on her face. "You mean they are not scared yet?" "They are," Zero said, joining them. He cocked his head towards one of the other teams. "I just heard them strategizing on how to hold you back." "They are worried about me?" Lyra asked, disbelieving. "Of course," Zero said. "Everybody knows you are the ace of our team. Beryl and I will do our best to not slow you down. We'll also keep an eye out on any enemies trying to get in your way. You are our best hope, flatterer, Lyra mumbled. Initially, there had been an awkward air between them after she rejected him, but over the weeks that air had dissipated. Zero no longer involved himself in her affairs, but they maintained a cordial relationship. Suddenly, Zero dropped to one knee. Looking down, Lyra saw him tying her shoelace. A few other students noticed and started whispering mischievously. The attention Anne, knowing what her classmates were definitely saying, made Lyra's cheeks pinken. Done. Zero stood back up and gave her a disarming smile. First, we need to make sure you don't take yourself out. Beryl patted him on the back. Ever the gentleman. How come Julian is the complete opposite of you when you two grew up together? I'm not a gentleman, Zero said, meeting Lyra's eyes before looking away. Thank you, Lyra said, wondering what the look in his eyes was about, and Beryl was right, he was a gentleman. But why didn't it feel as if he was just being humble by denying it? Beryl gave an enthusiastic nod. Right, and I'm not female. Shortly after that, the maps were distributed. Their flag was in the western part of the forest, and Lyra recognized some of the features right away. I know a shortcut, she told Beryl and Zero. Zero raised his brow. What do you mean you've never been there? I have, she told him. I train in the forest after school sometimes. What? He sounded horrified. The forest has been closed for weeks due to safety concerns. Have you been going in there alone? Before the incident, she told him. Even though it wasn't entirely true. Yes, she had been in the forest a few more times since the corrupted wolf incident. But that was only because even though the warning had been in place, she knew from Julian that the warriors patrolling the forest had not found any traces of foreign wolves. Even then, Zero said, you never know what you can come across in there. It's better to always go in pairs. I'll keep that in mind, she told him. His concern for her was palpable in his voice and clear on his face. Even after she shot him down, his concern for her was still as genuine as ever. She no longer fantasized about being mated to him, but she couldn't help thinking that his mate would be truly lucky to have such a kind-hearted person by her side. The three of them worked out their route and strategy, planning on how to get to the treasure first and to counter the other teams. The trickiest part about the hunt was not getting to it, it was getting back to the base with it. Opponents were allowed to dispossess each other of the treasure at any point, and the winner would be the one who brought it back to the base. So, getting to it first did not guarantee a win. Once they started, the three of them split up. It was their trick to make it harder for their opponents to disrupt their progress. The plan was for Lyra to go straight to the treasure using her shortcut, while Zero and Beryl threw the others off her track. This also helped because Lyra's scent was not as strong as Beryl's or Zero's, whose scents were still noticeable even in their human forms. This made it harder for the other teams to keep up with her. While they took different paths, eventually, they all converged at a common point. Beryl and Zero got there just in time to see streaking towards them at full speed, a red flag clasped in one hand. Her clothes were smudges with dirt and leaves, and there was a bruise forming on her forehead. What happened? Beryl asked when Lyra got to them. Are you okay? I'm good, Lyra said between heavy breaths. Anna, from Team B, also got there at the same time. We fought for it. I won. But she is right behind me. Good job, Zero said. Let's get out of here. We are not giving this up. The way back proved to be tougher than the way into the forest. The other two teams, after finding out that the flag was captured, set out with one goal, to hunt them down. This time, the three of them stayed together to better defend the flag. About a couple 100 meters away from the base, they were cornered by two enemies. Go, Zero told Lyra, stepping in front of her. We'll keep them busy. Beryl looked at Lyra and nodded. We've got this. With a nod, Lyra turned and streaked towards the edge of the forest. The two enemies tried to go after her, but they were stopped by Zero and Beryl. By the time Lyra was out of sight, it had turned into a merciless fight. When Lyra got back to the base, she found out that their team had been the first one to bring back the flag. It was not until a couple of hours later that the last winner appeared at the base with their flag, the entire team looking like they had survived 100 battles. During the graduation ceremony, Lyra was awarded as the MVP of the final test, and also commended for her outstanding performance throughout the training period. As was customary, as the top graduate, she was assigned to the King's Guard. It was a position which she never would have thought would be possible for her, and which before then would have seemed unattainable for a she-wolf of her rank. But, while it was an achievement worth celebrating, it was not all roses and rainbows. After her appointment, the captain of the King's Guard informed her that she would be part of the team that accompanied the king to the Blacksword Pack to fetch Crystal Black to the palace for the engagement ceremony. Since the King's Guard had many members, and she was just a newbie, Lyra thought that it was impossible that she would be allocated to guard the king from up close. But it turned out she was wrong. To her horror, she was assigned to drive in the same car as Julian, and not in the front with the driver. That was how she found herself sitting across from Julian, trying her best to numb her pain as they got closer to Blacksword Pack. Closer to the female her mate had chosen over her. Lyra kept her eyes glued to the window, watching the outside through the tinted glass. She could feel Julian's gaze on her face more than a few times, but she fought the urge to look at him. The air in the car was heavy with tension. Nobody said anything, and that was just fine with Lyra. There was nothing to say after all. He had said all he wanted to say, and he was doing as he had said. She was not going to be pathetic and say anything. She was here as a member of the King's Guard, not as his mate. She wished she felt like that. Instead, it felt like she was being forcibly dragged to hell. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life for having landed such a job. A job that she never would have thought she could get even in her wildest dream. She wished she could push everything else away and bask in the feeling of a new beginning and a promising future. Instead, here she was, miserable because of a male who was not worth it. Lyra looked at her wristwatch, calculating how much longer they would be on the road. She groaned internally when she noticed it had just been 5 minutes since the last time she checked her watch, and there was still 2 hours until they reached their destination. How on earth she was going to survive the next 2 hours? She couldn't. Shit! She cursed as the car swerved suddenly and then came to a sudden stop. The sudden momentum threw her from her seat and towards Julian's side. He wrapped his hands around her as she settled in his lap. Over the intercom, the driver informed them that there was an obstacle on the road and that it would take a few minutes to clear it. Lyra hurried to scramble off Julian's lap, but he tightened his hold around her waist. He dropped his head and nuzzled the side of her neck, running the tip of his nose along her skin. "What do you think you are doing?" she asked sharply. She hated her body's instant reaction to being so close to him, heart racing and skin tingling, but she was going to die before she gave him any indication of the effect he had on her. "What does it look like I'm doing?" he asked against her skin, his warm breath washing over her skin. He moved one hand beneath her uniform jacket and pulled her shirt, untucking it from her pants. "Stop!" she snapped, reaching for his hand and pushing it away. He let her go, but only to grab her chin seconds later. He turned her face towards him. "Haven't you missed me?" he asked. For the first time that day, she really looked at him. Was he crazy? Or was he suffering from memory loss? "We are on our way to fetch your future queen," she said, because it seemed that he needed a reminder. "And?" he asked nonchalantly, stroking her jaw with his thumb. "What's that got to do with this?" She clenched her teeth. What a psycho. "Let go of me," she demanded. His eyes moved from her eyes to her lips, up and down again. Tightening his grip on her chin, he kept her from pulling back as he pressed his lips to hers. Lyra kept her lips pressed together and pushed his shoulders. When he realized she wasn't going to let him in, he pulled back and released her. Lyra shot off his lap and scrambled back to her seat. Shooting him an angry glare, she started fixing her uniform. Julian sat back in his seat and threw one leg over the other lazily. "Aren't you going to do anything about it?" "About what?" she snapped, no longer avoiding his gaze. "You're trying to act professionally." She made a show of wiping her lips with the back of her hand with a disgusted look on her face. Julian's lips curled in a condescending smirk. "Me going to get my future queen? I thought you'd grab that chance to remind me that I'm your mate. Have you finally given up your delusion of becoming my queen?" Lyra's hands curled into fists. She really had been stupid and foolish. To think that she had actually started believing that he cared about her. Now, not only was he humiliating her in this way and completely disregarding her, but he was also mocking her while at it. She wanted to be so angry that she didn't feel the hurt that was crawling inside her. But the pain won. The car was still stationary, so she reached for the door and pushed it open. She alighted and shut the door behind her, checking her surroundings. All the other cars in the convoy had also stopped and were waiting. Without hesitating, she walked over to the car behind and opened the back door. Zero was inside, alone, and using his tablet. "I'll join you," she told him, climbing into the car without waiting for his response. "Sure," he said, placing his tablet down. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said, putting on her seatbelt. "The king wants to be alone." There were questions in Zero's eyes, but he did not ask them. Instead, he nodded and asked, "How is your new job?" "Great," she said half-heartedly. She had the urge to vent, but she had been the one to tell Zero to stop being involved in her issues with Julian. She couldn't do that, then go ahead and dump her frustrations with Julian on him. It was her burden to bear. After all, Zero had warned her, hadn't he? "Hopefully I don't ruin it," seeing as she was already letting her personal feelings get in the way of her work. Maybe it wouldn't be long before she did that. "Why would you say that? You've got this," he told her. "Don't forget that you beat a bunch of spoiled elite brats who have access to the best resources and opportunities." Like always, Zero could make her feel better. She looked at him with a small smile. "Are you saying that you are a spoiled elite brat?" "Depends on the situation," he told her with a mischievous wink. Tane. Crystal could barely hide her dislike for Lyra when the convoy from the palace finally arrived at the Blacksword Pack. As if it wasn't enough that a low-rank Omega such as Lyra had affected the laws in the kingdom, she was now staying by the king's side as his personal bodyguard. What on earth was the kingdom coming to? At this rate, everybody was going to think they were the same as alpha bloodlines. It had almost hurt physically when her father had put her in charge of establishing the new scholarship under Lyra's name. Crystal wished she had never left the palace. That way, she would have made sure that nothing like this ever happened. It was a good thing that she was going back. Lyra's time to shine and gloat was over, she just did not know it yet. Despite the dark feelings in her heart, Crystal smiled at Lyra after greeting the king. "I've heard about your achievements at the academy. Congratulations." Lyra was not fooled by the fake smile, but she returned it with one of her own. "Thank you, I learned a lot." Crystal snickered inwardly. The only thing someone like her needed to learn was her place. And Crystal would see to that as soon as possible. That night, Lyra was assigned to stand guard outside the guest room, where Julian was staying. The problem was Julian was not alone. Crystal joined him. Even after everything that had happened, Lyra believed that they would not spend the night together. Julian knew she was right outside the door. He would have to be utterly cruel to do that. Not long after Crystal walked through the door, however, The sound of loud feminine moans reached her ears. It was only the beginning of a long series of sounds that left no doubt what was happening behind the door. Lyra had been betrayed countless times before, but this one weighed like a ton of bricks of her. Devon had never made her feel like he would accept her as his mate. But Julian, he had acted like he actually cared about her. He had made her think that he treasured the connection between them. But now he was showing her that whatever hopes she had held in her heart were a product of her foolish fantasies. Nothing more. The sound of footsteps echoed in the empty hallway, and Lyra looked up to see Zero approaching. She hoped that he would not hear anything, but then again, he was supposed to have far better hearing than her. The humiliation. When Zero got to her, he stopped and cocked his head towards the exit. Want to get out of here. Want. She needed to get out of there. I can't leave my post, she told him. You can, he told her. There's lots of guards right outside. No one will miss you. He'll definitely not miss me. All right, she told him. Zero led Lyra to a pub in the compound that was only a 5 minutes walk from Alpha Black's mansion. They got a table in a corner at the back and ordered drinks. I know my cousin can be tough to deal with sometimes, Zero said as they waited for their drinks. But you won't have to put up with it forever. Zero had noticed that Lyra's mood had been subdued lately, and he knew it was because of Julian. She must be hurting due to Julian's decision to go ahead with his engagement to Crystal. But he knew better than to make comments about her relationship with his cousin. When Lyra had told him that Julian was treating her well, Zero had thought that maybe his cousin had come to his senses. When he heard about the upcoming formal engagement ceremony, he had thought about Lyra. As much as he wanted to comfort her, he was careful to not cross the line. What do you mean? She asked, looking at him curiously. Quitting her job was not an option. Even if she had to bear the sight of Julian and Crystal every day, she could not quit. She had worked too hard to get where she was, and she was not going to give it up no matter what. She could not go back to when she could not do anything for herself. Or anyone. The Queen Mother had given her an opportunity to lead a new life, and she would not throw it away. Only by persisting could she, in some way that she couldn't yet fathom, break free from Julian. Your term as part of the King's Guard will last for only 3 years, Zero informed her. After that, you'll get an opportunity to be assigned to a different pack. If you perform well in the Guard, you could get assigned a rank as high as an Alpha. Lyra blinked and stared at him in silence for a moment. Stunned. Really? Zero nodded. There are permanent members of the King's Guard, and then there are those, like you, who only serve for a period of time. Where you end up after that depends on your performance during these 3 years. If you keep up what you've been doing, I'm sure you'll end up somewhere great. Lyra could hardly believe what she was hearing. 3 years was a long time. But just knowing that at the end of it all, she would get another chance at yet another new beginning. It didn't seem too far off. I did not know that, she muttered. At some point, she had lost hope of being able to go back and revive her old pack. But many things had changed. She was no longer a slave, and she had become a lot stronger. If she worked hard for 3 years, that meant she could revive her old pack. As long as Julian did not claim her as his mate, which he had no intention of doing, she could walk away from the royal palace when her 3-year term ended. He would have no excuse to try and keep her at the palace, if he even bothered after so long. She would be free. Their drinks arrived, and when they made a toast, Zero noticed the new light in Lyra's eyes. He admired her spirit. No matter what, she always remained hopeful and did everything she could to get what she wanted. He knew without doubt that from then onwards, she would be the best recruit the King's Guard had ever seen. It put him at ease to know that even though he could not be by her side like he wanted, she was not helpless. She had proven that she was more than capable of fighting her own battles, and he knew she would not give up easily. Later, Lyra went back to her post outside Julian and Crystal's room. Fortunately, by the time she got back, it seemed that they had gone to sleep, so she was not subjected to any unpleasant sounds. She tried not to think about the two of them together in bed, but her mind did not spare her. Was Julian holding her close, whispering sweet words in her ears? Were they planning their future together? Was he telling her that she was just the female he had been looking for to stand beside him and rule the kingdom together? In the morning, Julian and Crystal emerged from the room together. The schedule was to have breakfast first before they left for the royal palace. When Crystal saw Lyra, her mouth curled in contempt. Lyra looked right back at her with a blank face. "Your Majesty, Miss Black." "I'll escort you to breakfast," she said. Crystal rolled her eyes and hooked her arm around Julian's. None of them said anything as they started down the hallway. Lyra fell into step behind them. After breakfast, she escorted them to their car. This time, Julian was riding with Crystal, and Lyra was assigned to a different car. When she got back to the palace, she no longer had to accompany the king. So she went to the training room. She had arranged with Zero to train together after they got back. And he met her there a few minutes later. Even though she had sparred with many classmates of higher ranks during the training camp, none of them could compare to Zero. He was a lot better than most others, and she was curious to find out how she could hold out against him. "Don't hold back," she warned him when they stepped into the ring together, ready to start. "I won't," he told her, and true to his word, he did not. She realized very fast that he was on an entirely different level. But, while she could not match his strength and technique, her reflexes were fast enough to avoid many of his attacks and make her last long. "You are annoyingly fast," Zero told her after they were done. "It'd be hard for anyone to pin you down." "Why, thank you," she said, smiling as she took a sip of water. "Let's do this again," he said. "You keep me on my toes." Definitely. For the first time in days, Lyra felt genuine happiness. She still had a lot of improvement to do, but her current condition was not bad at all. With a sparring partner like Zero, she could only get better and better. That night, she fell asleep with a smile on her face, feeling in her heart that she was indeed capable of being so much more. The next day, Julian and Crystal's engagement ceremony was held at the royal palace. Alphas and Lunas from all over the kingdom and all other high-ranking officials were present. It was such a huge, glamorous affair that Lyra could not imagine how the wedding would outshine it. As part of the security team, Lyra was stationed outside the banquet hall before the ceremony officially began. Guests walked past her on the way inside the palace, and that was how Devon came upon her. Lyra noticed him from a distance. He was not alone. Allison was right beside him, her arm hooked through his. Lyra hoped that they would not notice her, but that turned out to be too much to hope for. As soon as Devon had stepped inside the palace grounds, his eyes had been roving all over the place, searching for Lyra. When he finally saw her, he did a double take. It was definitely her, but she looked so different from what he remembered. And it was not just because she was looking more sexy than ever in her tight black pants and leather jacket. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail, making her beautiful facial features stand out even more. She had a certain bearing to her that seemed foreign, almost as if she had changed into an entirely different person. His eyes lingered on her chest, then her hips as he walked purposely towards her. Damn, he had forgotten what a body she had, soft, curvy in all the right places. Allison was too busy admiring their surroundings that she did not realize where Devon was leading her until they stopped right in front of Lyra. Allison blinked, taking in the female before her. She frowned. "Wait, is this Lyra?" Devon said in greeting, unhooking his arm from Allison's and stepping forward. He smiled at Lyra, It's nice to see you again. Lyra watched him with a guarded look. Her eyes moved from him to Allison, who was looking at her in confusion and annoyance. Maintaining her professional facade, Lyra said, "Alpha Devon and Luna Allison, welcome to the Royal Palace." She stretched her hand towards the hall. "The banquet hall is right that way. How long has it been?" Devon continued, much to Lyra's chagrin. "Could he not get a hint and get lost already? It feels like I haven't seen you in forever. You have changed so much." With those words, his eyes crawled all over her, shamelessly lingering on her chest. Allison stepped forward and hooked their arms together again. Lyra knew that the two had already been bonded and were mates. Despite that, Devon did nothing to hide the obvious lust in his eyes as he looked at Lyra. It made Lyra's skin crawl. "Babe, let's go inside," Allison told Devon. "You don't want to be seen talking to a palace slave, do you?" Lyra wished he would listen to his Luna. Ignoring Allison's biting remark, she said, "The ceremony will be starting soon. It's best if you go inside. We can catch up until then," Devon said. "Catch up." Lyra could not tell where he was going with this. In comparison to the last conversation they had, this seemed like someone had hijacked his body. She did not mistake the hungry look in his eyes as he looked at her, but she was clueless as to what his attitude was about. It would make sense if Julian was around, and Devon was trying to put on a show. But then again, she was supposed to be the mate who had betrayed and humiliated him. So why would he bother acting all nice, like they were old friends? "How is life at the palace?" he asked her. "All right," Lyra answered. Beside Devon, Allison was seething. She was not oblivious to the way her mate looked at the other female, shamelessly undressing her with his eyes in broad daylight and right in front of her. More than that, she was irritated that Lyra looked like that. Wasn't she supposed to be slaving away in the palace's boiler room or something? "I bet you found your way to survive," Allison said. "I heard that you were involved with the new laws passed by the king. You must be very close to him." Lyra did not miss the hidden meaning behind those words. She ignored it. The last thing she wanted was to engage the pair any further. "Your hair looks so much better," Devon said. "Was it always so glossy?" He lifted his arm to touch it. Lyra grabbed his arm and twisted it away from her, then gave him a shove. "What the hell?" Allison snapped as she stumbled right along with Devon. Devon righted himself and once again separated himself from Allison. "What the fuck was that?" Lyra regarded him calmly. "Don't touch me," Devon huffed. His expression went from lusty to angry. He tugged at his tie, his face twisting with a sneer. "You must think you are a hot shot now, huh?" He moved towards Lyra again. He took a second to look around, and seeing nobody else around, raised his hand to slap her. But Lyra saw it coming, dodged, and punched him in the jaw. Allison shrieked in horror. Devon growled and lurched forward. He was all emotion, and obviously did not think that Lyra could fight him, so it was quite easy for Lyra to take him down. Seconds later, she had him on the ground, with her knee on his spine and his arm twisted behind his back. "Behave if you don't want to be thrown out of the palace," she warned. Allison watched the scene with bulging eyes, her hand pressed to her throat. You are crazy. How dare you attack an alpha? Do you want to die?" Lyra wondered, what about the situation suggested that she was the one who was courting death? "Understood?" she asked Devon, giving his arm one final jerk before releasing him. Devon got to his feet quickly and looked around. Luckily, there did not seem to be any witnesses to that. His face was red with anger. How could an Omega like her take him down like that? Allison rushed to his side and started straightening his jacket. "Are you okay? Did she hurt you? We should report this to the palace immediately." "Shut up!" Devon snarled, taking off his jacket and pushing it into Allison's hands. Why would he report that he had been attacked by an Omega? He had no idea where she got her strength from, but he knew she could not shift. Could she fight against a wolf? I'll teach her manners myself. His eyes flashed red, and Lyra realized what was about to happen. Her teeth clenched together. The last thing she wanted was to cause a spectacle during the king's engagement ceremony. Devon should also think twice before doing so, but the feral look in his eyes suggested he was beyond reasoning. She couldn't think of a way to stop him, only because she did not want to get in trouble herself, but fortunately, Zero showed up just at that moment. As soon as Zero saw Devon, he recognized him as the alpha of the Red Moon Pack and Lyra's former mate. He went over to them and stood right next to Lyra, looking down at Devon with a hard look. What do you think you are doing? What is it to you? Devon snapped, giving him a glare. This is between me and her, mind your own business. You are the one who should learn manners and mind your business. Zero told him, respect the king's guard or you'll find yourself enjoying the ceremony from the dungeons. The king's what? Devon looked from Zero and then to Lyra. Surely he didn't mean her. He looked back at Zero. I have no issue with you, he told him. He pointed an accusing finger at Lyra. This female is from my pack, and she dared to insult me. It's within my rights to discipline her how I see fit. Zero took a step closer to Zero, his eyes narrowing. Oh, you have the right to discipline the king's personal bodyguard? You must be very important. Forgive me for not realizing that. Devon scoffed. Are you saying that she is the king's bodyguard? You've got hearing problems? Is that what she told you? Or are you telling lies to protect her because you've been fucking her? Devon asked condescendingly. This female is a cursed slave. The last place she would be is by the king's side. Look, maybe you don't know her real identity. At this point, he lifted his hand, meaning to give Zero a pat on his shoulder. Let me tell you the truth. Zero grabbed his hand and snapped his wrist backwards. He released it just before he could break it. Then he allowing his aura to burst forth, revealing his rank. I am Alpha Zero of the Azure Pack and the King's cousin. I'll not warn you twice. Disrespect the King's guard one more time, and you'll no longer be treated like a guest. Realizing the gravity of Devon's mistake, Allison quickly stepped forward and held Devon's arm. We are sorry. It was a misunderstanding. She apologized to Zero. We did not mean to cause any trouble. The Red Moon Pack was already in trouble. The last thing they needed was to anger a member of the royal family. If Lyra was indeed the king's guard, their aggression towards her could be seen as an affront to the Lycan King himself. Devon's nostrils flared as he tried to control himself, damn it. What was it with Lyra and all these royal assholes? Begrudgingly, he let Allison lead him away towards the banquet hall. It was fine. He would give it another go later. About half an hour later, all the guests had arrived, and it was time for the ceremony to begin. With everyone settled in the banquet hall, it was time for the king and his fiancée to make their appearance. Lyra followed behind them, her eyes glued to their joined hands. They smiled at each other before stepping into the hall to the applause of the crowd. It was like a scene from a fairy tale. Compliments flew in from left to right. What a beautiful couple. Miss Black is very beautiful indeed. Finally, His Majesty found his match. This is a match made by the goddess herself. The kingdom is blessed, indeed. Those words only added to the anguish in Lyra's heart. They were like affirmations to Julian's reasoning. He needed a queen with a good background, power, and strength. Crystal Black was all that. No matter how strong and capable Lyra was, nobody would say such words if they saw her beside him. They would likely say the king had lost his way, that the kingdom was doomed. Nobody would say that it was the match the goddess had made, even if, ironically, it was. The hall was the image of glitz and glamour, from the decorations to the guests themselves. Julian and Crystal walked to the high table overlooking the entire hall. Lyra stood behind them, on Julian's right. From her position, she could see every inch of the hall. The engagement ceremony took place first, with blessings from the high priestess of the kingdom. The two sides, the royal pack and the black sword pack, signed a memorandum that officially established Crystal as the future queen. This officially elevated her status and allowed her to carry out functions as part of the royal family. In the crowd, Devon watched Lyra in her position behind the king like a hawk. How on earth could she make it to such a position? Just a few months ago, she had been a nobody in his pack. She had belonged to him. How could she attain such a status in such a short period wherever? He himself could not get so close to the Lycan King without getting an appointment first. Yet there she was, an Omega glued to the king's side. A slave, a fucking slave, was now above him. She must think so highly of herself. After the formal part of the ceremony was over, the host announced the start of the party, inviting the guests to dance and feast to their fill. As Julian and Crystal went around the room conversing with various guests, Lyra retreated to the shadows. Devon took his time working his way around the room before finally approaching her. Most people were half drunk at that point, so he was not afraid of anyone particularly paying attention to them. "Would you like to dance with me?" he asked her. Lyra looked at him blankly. "This is not the place for your games," she warned him. "Stay away from me unless you want trouble." Devon scoffed and stepped into her face. "Is that so? Have you forgotten what I still hold in my hands?" Lyra's jaw clenched. The mysterious box from her parents. As long as Devon had his hands on it, she could not provoke him. There was a time she would have believed that Julian would help her retrieve it, but that time was long gone. "That's a yes then?" Devon asked, an evil smile on his face, left with no choice. Lyra put her hand in his. Devon smirked and wrapped his arm around her. "Good, now we can have a nice talk." "I cannot dance for long," Lyra said, sickened by his touch. "I'm still at work." "I'll go straight to the point then," Devon said. His hand moved beneath her jacket, pressing her side through her shirt. "It seems that you've made something of yourself in the palace, so I think you can be of help to your pack." "I'm no longer a part of your pack," Lyra told him. "Do you want your inheritance or not?" He growled. "What do you want from me?" Lyra asked tightly. Devon gave her a devious smile. "One of my major investments did not go as I expected, and our pack finances are tight. You can help me with that, right?" "I'm not sure I can help you with that," Lyra told him. "What do you mean you can't?" Devon asked her. "Surely they don't pay the king's bodyguards skimpily, do they?" Lyra looked at him speechlessly for a few seconds. He wanted her to give him her money. The money she earned. How on earth could she fix his pack's finances with her salary? It's not like she was getting paid an insane amount. "I don't think I can be any help to you with my salary," she told him. "Oh, come on," he said, lifting his hand to stroke her cheek. Lyra pushed it away immediately. He snickered, then brought his lips close to her ear. "You seem to have made many important friends in the palace. I'm sure you can find a way to give me what I want. If you can't, you know what will happen to your belongings." Lyra did not even want to think about what he was suggesting. Either way, she could not let him destroy the box. Her parents would not have left it to her with clear instructions on how to deal with it if it hadn't been extremely important. "I'll do what I can," she told him. "Now, that's what I like to hear," he said, pulling back. "You wouldn't have found your way to the palace if it were not for me, so you should show a little gratitude." "I have to go back to my post now," she told him. "What do you mean?" "We only spoke business," Now we can really have some fun together. He squeezed her side with his fingers, then rubbed his palm upwards towards her chest. Let's go somewhere more private, over her dead body. But before she could disabuse him of his wild idea, she felt an overwhelming presence next to them. Turning her head, she saw Asher standing right next to them. He gave Devon a cutting glare before focusing on her. Devon removed his arms from around Lyra and held his hand out to Asher for a shake. Hello, we've met before. I'm Alpha Devon of Sud. Asher turned around and stalked off, ignoring him completely. Lyra allowed herself one satisfying look at Devon's peeved face before following Asher. She wasn't particularly happy about Julian summoning her, but anything that saved her from Devon was welcome at that point. Asher led the way from the banquet hall and took the stairs. He stopped outside the door to Julian's room. He's waiting inside. Lyra hesitated for a second. Why was Julian in his suite when the engagement party was still going on? Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and walked inside. The room was dimly lit, with the lights off and the bedside lamp set to low. Her eyes made out Julian sitting on the armchair near the window, a glass of alcohol in his hand. Lyra took a couple of steps into the room and stopped, holding her hands in front of her. I'm here, Your Majesty. He lifted his head and looked at her. His blonde hair, which had earlier on been slicked back, hung over his forehead and into his eyes. Even in the dim light, Lyra could feel the intensity of his gaze. Why are you standing so far away? He asked her. I don't bite. Lyra took a few more steps towards him until she was right in front of his chair. Did you need me for anything? She asked him. Why wasn't he downstairs with Crystal? Why was he drinking? What the hell did he want with her? Am I bothering you? He asked her. Do you want to go back to your lover? Lyra's brows pulled together in confusion. What was he? Devon. He must have seen the two of them dancing. I was just being polite, she told him. That's an interesting way to be polite, he said, putting his glass down and getting to his feet. Letting him grope you and all but fuck you right in front of everyone. Did you miss him so much? Lyra gritted her teeth. It had been so long since she had heard the cruel tone in his voice, but there it was. Just like the first days. You misunderstood, she told him. Just like I misunderstood that day when you were in bed with that other male. He questioned. What else have I misunderstood? He walked around her like a predator stalking his prey. The fact that you are a whore who cannot keep her legs closed. Lyra's nails dug into her palms. You claimed that he was abusive to you. But the moment you see him, you start rubbing yourself against him like a starved slut. Did you even care that your mate was in the same room? Lyra had been restraining herself, but she could no longer hold her scoff. What mate? The one whose engagement party to another female is going on right now. He stopped in front of her, glaring daggers at her. Were you trying to get back at me? Me and you have nothing to do with each other, she told him firmly. Other than me being your bodyguard. What I do with myself is none of your business, just as you marrying another female is none of mine. Can I go now? Julian reached out and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against him roughly. She gasped as air whooshed out of her chest, but did not get to recover as he slammed his lips on hers. Lyra's arms were squashed between their bodies, making it impossible for her to push him back. He gave her a hard and fast bruising kiss until she was out of breath. What do you think you are doing? She snapped breathlessly when he pulled back. Julian held her by the shoulders and pushed her towards the bed. She fell on her back. He trapped her to the mattress with his body before she had the chance to get up. You are crazy, she told him through gritted teeth. Aren't you supposed to be with your fiancé right now? Eager to run back to your lover. He spat. He used one hand to hold her down by the shoulder while the other went straight to her pants. "You are mine." Lyra could not believe the absurdity of it all. "Fuck you. Oh, you are about to." Despite her protesting hand, he managed to unbutton and unzip her pants. Shoving his hand inside, he cupped her between her legs. "This pussy belongs to me, and no one else. I'm the only one who gets to fuck this. You let one else inside you, and I'll fucking kill him." A strangled sound rose in Lyra's throat. A mixture of everything she wanted to do, cry, laugh. How could someone so self-centered exist? She had thought she had seen all his worst colors, but she had been wrong. He was fucking insane. Julian pushed 2 fingers inside her. Shoving them all the way in, Lyra cried out at the sudden intrusion. He brought his mouth to the crook of her neck and sucked on her skin while also biting her, as if wanting to leave marks behind. "Your body knows who it belongs to," he rasped, as he moved his fingers faster, her walls getting wet around his digits. "I don't belong to you," she spat. She hated her body, she hated herself, she hated him. With every thrust of his fingers, her arousal became more evident. She realized she had been delusional to think she could survive 3 years in the palace. She had imagined that he would leave her alone after formalizing his union with Crystal. Seeing as he was doing this, while his engagement party was happening downstairs, she realized he had no intention of leaving her alone, but she couldn't live like this. If this was what was in store for her, it was not worth it to stay for anything. She could make a life for herself outside the palace. He eventually turned her onto her back and entered her from behind, filling her with one brutal thrust. He held her hands over her head and slammed into her over and over again until he finally came with a loud groan. Lyra waited until he released her hands and got off her before trying to leave the bed. The scent of sex filled the room. But other than that, only the sound of their breathing could be heard. Lyra pulled her pants up and fixed her clothes, then left his suite. As far as Julian was concerned, the engagement ceremony had been a total failure. He had not gotten what he had wanted from it, contrary to what his guests might think. Instead, annoyingly, he had gotten a fiancée that had not been part of his plan. If his plan had worked, Alpha Black would be groveling in the royal dungeon at this point of the night, and the entire Black Sword pack would be at Julian's mercy. But as it turned out, Alpha Black was playing his cards close to his chest, careful enough to not take one step wrong where Julian could catch him. Julian wondered whether the other male knew that he was investigating him. He had expected to get the final piece of information that would expose Alpha Black's scheming during the ceremony, but that hadn't happened. Now here he was, saying goodbye to important guests with Crystal glued to his side. A lot was said, but he could barely hear it. Not that it mattered. It was all inflated words of praise from elites who wanted his favor. Crystal seemed to be carrying on the conversations well enough. Even if he did not necessarily want her to be his queen, he could admit that she would be good at it. While Crystal and some couple discussed a future hunt event, Julian's eyes wandered to where Lyra stood. She was alert as ever, her eyes scanning the thinning crowd. Coincidentally, she looked at him then, their eyes meeting. She did not look away immediately, and he could swear he could see the hurt in her eyes across the distance. But she looked away just as casually, as if she felt nothing. She did not have to show it, though. He knew how she felt. They were mates after all, and they were connected in ways that could not be put into words. She must hate him. But no matter what, he had to do this for the sake of the pack. He was the Lichen King. He had to look at the bigger picture. Does that have anything to do with why you were burning with jealousy when you saw her with her former mate? His Wolfury asked. Julian gritted his teeth together. So yes, he could not stand to see her being close to another male. She belonged to him. Damn it. He frowned as he saw Lyra walk towards the exit of the hall. Where was she going? She was supposed to be in his vicinity at all times. Through MindLink, he asked Asher where she was going. Shortly after, Asher let him know that Lyra had gotten permission from the captain of the King's Guard to leave early. Get her back, Julian ordered immediately. He knew how she felt about him at that moment. When she had left his room earlier, she had an inscrutable expression that left him more than a little frustrated. She did not exhibit any of the reaction he expected. Instead, she had looked done with him. He could not put it past her to try and leave the palace to get away from him. Even if she was ready to give up everything, he could not let her go. She was still his only protection against his curse. A few minutes later, she appeared in front of him. Did you need me, Your Majesty? You are not allowed to leave my sight tonight, he told her. Something flashed in Lyra's eyes. If they had been alone, he was certain she would have told him off. Or maybe not. Besides that moment of defiance, there was a new iciness in her eyes that he had never seen there before. Yes, Your Majesty, she said. Quietly, she stepped to the side. A while later, after every important guest had left, Crystal walked up to him and put her arms around his neck, pressing her body to his. I'm so wiped, want to go to bed. In the corner of his eyes, Julian caught Lyra looking at them. He swallowed and nodded at Crystal. Sure. Crystal leaned in and pressed a kiss to his mouth before taking his hand and leading him towards the stairs. Lyra was a few steps behind. When Julian and Crystal went into his suite, Lyra remained outside the door. Inside, Julian released Crystal's hand and began undoing his tie. Crystal pushed his hands away and started doing it for him. The ceremony was so beautiful, she told him, flattering her lashes at him. Thank you. Why was she thanking him? It was all Thea's work. He could not give a rat's ass what went where, or what Crystal liked for that matter. Crystal pulled off his tie and threw it to the bed. Then she started unbuttoning his shirt, her movement slow. When it was wide open, she pressed her palms to his bare chest and leaned in to press a kiss to his throat. You must be so tired. Let me make you feel better. While saying that, she moved one hand to his crotch and rubbed him through his pants. An ache that had flashed through his chest the previous night at the Blacksword Pack reappeared. He knew its source, Lyra, right outside his door. And now, he could not get rid of the image of her hurt look from his mind. Crystal pushed him to take a seat on the bed. Then she unzipped her gown and let it fall to the floor. She was only wearing a flimsy pair of panties underneath, and she gave him a flirtatious look as she slid them down her thigh. Crystal was a total knockout, her beautiful face going hand in hand with a gorgeous body. She had curves he wanted to get lost in, soft skin he wanted to feel rubbing against him, and a pussy that felt like heaven. She was all his for the taking, and yet he said, "You should go to your room." Crystal hesitated as she stepped out of her panties. What? He waved his wrist at her in a dismissive move he knew would piss her off. I don't want you tonight. Crystal's mouth fell open in a silent gasp. What? She asked again, annoyed. He got to his feet and walked to the window. Don't make me repeat myself. With his back turned to her, he heard her put her gown back on. This is unbelievable, she said. She walked to him and stood in front of him. What is going on with you? I don't want to fuck you, he told her. Simple as that. Crystal huffed, her face mottled with anger and humiliation. Do you think I'm some tramp you can just have when you want and toss when you are bored? I'm your fiancé. Would you rather I have my guards throw you out? He asked her coldly. Crystal hesitated. Looked like she was wise after all. He would do it and she knew it. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Is this because of her? That was not the question Julian was expecting. Her, he asked, genuinely confused. Crystal laughed dryly. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. She pointed towards the front door. That slave standing out there. Don't think I haven't seen how you've been looking at her all day. Is she the one you want instead? Julian's jaw hardened. You have no idea what you are talking about. I'm not stupid, Crystal snapped. I will not stand by and let you humiliate me by sticking your cock in some filthy, disgusting slave. If you don't get rid of her, I'll do it myself. With that, she turned around and stormed out of the room. Julian stared at the door after she slammed it. A myriad of emotions coursing through him. He couldn't exactly say why he had done that. It was not like he hadn't already had sex with Crystal. He could not afford to anger her like this when he was still investigating her father. Cursing, he raked his fingers through his hair. What did he care that Lyra was outside? It's not like he wasn't going to take a queen because of her. What the heck was wrong with his brain? There was a knock on the door. Who is it? He bit out. He was not in the mood to see anyone. It's me. Lyra's voice came from the other side. Julian wasn't aware of himself as he moved across the room and to the door. He pulled it open. There she stood on the other side, looking up at him with a strange resolution in her blue eyes. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice firm and emotionless. He didn't want to talk. Reaching forward, he grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into the room. Shutting the door, he pressed her against the panel and swooped down to kiss her. His body roared with need, his cock thickening behind his pants. He needed her. He couldn't wait. When he pulled back, he cradled her face in his hands and looked into her eyes. She looked back at him, her composure no longer in the picture. Her lips were wet and swollen and parted, and her eyes were dilated. He took her hand and brought her to the bed. This time, she did not argue with him. He could not explain the relief and satisfaction that swept through him as he finally sunk into her. Everything felt right, from the way she clung to him to the sounds she made. When they were done, he lay by her side, breathing heavily. Beside him, she got up and climbed from the bed. When she reached for her pants, he told her, "Stay here tonight." She stopped and looked at him. There was an impregnable moment of silence between them before she said, I, Lyra Jenkins of the Blue Knight Pack, reject you. Alpha Julian of the Royal Pack as my mate. Julian got up on his elbows, giving her a puzzled look. What? Lyra pulled on her pants. I'm rejecting you. I want you to set me free. Julian climbed out of bed and faced her. Forget about it. I don't accept your rejection. Lyra looked at him, her eyes hard and unwavering. Why not? What exactly do you want from me? You don't like that I'm your mate and you are getting mated to someone else. Let me go. Julian shook his head. You are not going anywhere. Your place is here with me. Lyra wanted to scream. He was not making any sense. Could he even hear himself? He did not want a mate as worthless as her. He formalized his engagement to a powerful alpha's daughter a few hours ago. So why could he not let her go? I don't want to be here or with you, she told him. I reject you as my mate, as you have rejected me in so many ways. Do me a favor and break this bond once and for all, and I'll get out of your life. Who said, I want you out of my life? He questioned. Lyra nodded, feeling ridiculous. You must think that since I have no background or a powerful pack behind me, I'll take whatever you throw my way. I did not come so far to be treated like this. You can accept my rejection or not. But either way, I'm leaving. You can try, he said. You cannot get away from me. I'm your king, and there's nowhere you can go where I won't find you. You do not have my permission to go anywhere. Don't cross me. What will you do? Kill me, she challenged him. A bitter smile crossed her lips. Go ahead. Death might be a great escape from this bullshit. You are not allowed to die either, he snapped. Did she really mean that? The thought that she would gladly welcome death just to be apart from him left a sour taste in his mouth. And, funnily, it was not because her death would mean his too. It was the same way the thought of anyone or anything hurting her made him feel. Then you can try your best to stop me, she told him, reaching for her bra. If you don't accept my rejection, as long as I'm alive, I'll want to leave you. I don't want to be part of your games anymore. Did Crystal say something to you? Julian asked. Is that why you are doing this? Next, Lyra reached for her shirt. Why? Am I so clueless and blind that I need your fiancé to say something to me to see the kind of jerk you are? You must think that I have no self-respect for myself. But then again, I'm just a slut to you, right? But since you are so insistent on keeping me here, I suppose that says a lot about you. Do you have a weakness for whores? Lyra, maybe it turns you on thinking about me with other males, she said. Is that why you called me here earlier after seeing me with Devon? It turned you on and you just couldn't wait to get a taste for yourself. His jaw clenched so hard he thought he was going to pop a bone. If you let another male touch you, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, she interrupted him, looking him in the eyes fearlessly. As far as I'm concerned, you are no longer my mate, and don't even get started on that when you fucked someone else with me right outside your door. If I see a male I want, I'll do what I want. And there's nothing you can do about it. His blood will be on your hands, he warned. Well then, let's see if you can keep up, she said, snapping up her jacket. After all, I'm a starved slut who cannot keep her legs closed. She marched towards the door, but he stopped her with his arms around her body, pulling her back into his chest. Say what you want, but I warn you, do not even think of escaping. You are mine. His grip around her was tight and painful, his voice harsh in her ear. The threat was clear in his voice, and she hated that it sent a shiver down her spine. But she held steadfast. She was not afraid of him. She was not a toy he could do with whatever he wanted. She wanted to leave, and she would, no matter what he did. When he let go of her, she walked out of his room without a backward glance. But she could feel his eyes glaring at the back of her head, his anger rolling after her like ocean waves. Unknown to Lyra, Crystal saw her leaving Julian's room. Seeing her, Crystal's anger, which had abated since leaving Julian's suite, ballooned once again. The hate she felt towards Lyra was so much it felt like a physical thing choking her. When she had told Julian that she would get rid of Lyra, she had not really put into thought how she would do that, but now she knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted Lyra out of the palace, never to get back again, and there was only one way to make sure she would never show her face near Julian again. Crystal had warned her, but she had not listened, so whatever happened to her was her own fault. I can help with that. A soft feminine voice floated into Crystal's mind. If you do what I say, she'll be gone forever, and no one will know your involvement. Crystal pressed a hand to her throat and looked around, spooked by the sudden voice. Who are you? She asked out loud. A friend, the voice replied. We both want the same thing. If you send her to the location I tell you, she'll die there. Do you want my help? Crystal had no idea who this was, or why they were inside her head. But since they both wanted the same thing, why hesitate? What location? She asked. The next day, Crystal ordered one of her servants to pass false information about the Royal Guard's rotation, requiring Lyra to patrol the western border for rogues. The order puzzled Lyra, as this was not part of her duties as a member of the King's Guard. There were more than enough warriors on patrol duty, but it wasn't hard for her to believe that Julian was doing this to punish her for what had happened the previous night. Was he daring her to escape? After confirming that the order was from the king, Lyra prepared to head out to the border. While she was surprised by the sudden assignment, she was happy that she was going to be away from the palace, even if just for a day. There was nothing odd as Lyra moved farther into the forest, getting away from the palace. It had been a while since the incident with the corrupted wolf, and she believed that Julian, despite his cruelty, would not send her out here alone if there had been any sightings. However, as she got closer to the border, the general atmosphere of the place shifted. There was a strange aura in the air that she could not pinpoint, and she carefully palmed her gun at her hip. Suddenly, soft laughter floated through the air. Lyra went still, her eyes scanning the area around her. It was soft feminine laughter, but the strange thing was that it seemed to be coming from all directions. The first thing that occurred to Lyra was that she must be a witch. It certainly wasn't human, and it couldn't be a werewolf either. She turned on her feet, looking in all directions. The laughter grew louder, but no one appeared. Lyra swallowed. She must have walked into a witch's trap. Dealing with rogues was one thing. A witch, heaven forbid, there was more, was an entirely different thing. The only thing she could do was go back and report the matter. She turned towards the direction she came from. But as soon as she took one step, the ground beneath her opened and swallowed her. Lyra yelled as she fell through the air before landing onto hard ground. Pain shot from her bottom to her back, causing her to wince. Shortly after she crashed to the ground, commotion rose around her, with the sound of scampering reaching her ears. Forgetting her pain, she quickly reached for her gun and looked around. She was in a chamber of some kind, an underground room. But despite the commotion, there was no one inside the room. Frowning, she got to her feet and looked upwards. Above her head, there was a wooden trapdoor covering the hole she had fallen through. Swallowing, she stepped farther into the room. Even though she could see no one, there were many scents in the air, and many different sounds, a whispering, breathing. I reached her ears. "Who's there?" she called out, holding her gun ready. There was no answer for a few moments. Slowly, Lyra made her way towards a passage leading away from the chamber. Finally, someone answered, "Who are you?" It was a masculine voice, and seconds later a male appeared from one of the passages. He looked warily at her gun and stopped. "What do you want?" "I fell through by accident," she told him, assessing him. Behind him, a female popped up. Then another male. Then another and another. Soon, there was an entire group watching her, a few with crude weapons in their hands. "I don't mean any harm." They were werewolves. All right. Rogues from the look of things. But what were they doing living underground in the royal forest? Was this how they hid from the patrol guards? "Where did you come from?" the male said. "I'm from the palace." A murmur rose among the group. "Are you here alone?" the male asked. Lyra thought before answering that question. Even though the group looked scared for some reason, she knew nothing about them. They were rogues. She could not trust them. But she also could not make them feel like she was a threat when she was down in their den alone. "Yes," she replied. She looked around. "How do I get out of here?" One of the females stepped forward. "You don't want to do that. There's something out there, and you are lucky it didn't get you yet." "What do you mean?" Lyra asked. "There's a monster wolf," the male replied. "Several. Actually, they've been showing up around here lately, so we built underground tunnels to stay away from them. It's getting harder to even hunt nowadays because of them." A monster wolf. He must be talking about the corrupted wolves. And several. Lyra swallowed nervously. If there were so many of them that it sent rogues scampering to underground tunnels, then they had a serious problem on their hands. If bitten by a corrupted wolf, a werewolf could mutate into one themselves. So, if corrupted wolves managed to attack such a group of rogues, the situation would escalate quickly. Realizing that the group was not wary of her but of the monster wolf, she slowly put away her gun. "Tell me about what you've seen," she told them. The palace has been tracking some strange creatures in the forest, but we've not caught any so far. Why should we tell her anything? Another male, younger than the first one, asked. The palace hunts us down too. Take her to the dungeon. And who else do you think is capable of getting rid of those monsters? The female asked. If the palace does not take care of it, we'll be stuck down here forever. We've not hunted in 3 days. Can you promise the safety of my pack? The first male asked. We only set camp here because we felt the royal forest was safer than anywhere else. We did not expect that they would be here too. As soon as this problem is gone, we'll leave. If you help us, I can talk to the king about it, she told him. Yes. She had been sent out here to check out rogues, but she had found a bigger problem. Rogues were nothing compared to corrupted wolves. If these rogues could provide important information about them, it would be a huge favor to Julian. The male nodded. My name is Roger. I'm Lyra, she told him. Roger's eyes lifted towards the ceiling of the chamber. How did you find us? I didn't, she told him. Your door opened from right under me. She remembered the soft laughter she had heard before the fall. Witches, rogues, corrupted wolves. It was an entire party out here. What if they find us? The female from earlier asked. If she did, so can they. I don't think it's safe here anymore. Anxious murmuring rose from among the group as they agreed with her. Do you have somewhere else you can take them? Lyra asked Roger. He nodded. Yes. I can also show you a safer passage out so you can get back safely. Please send help as soon as you can. We cannot survive down here for much longer. I will, she promised him. After that, it was a flurry of activity as the werewolves grabbed their belongings. Roger reminded everyone to be as quiet as possible. The corrupted wolves had heightened senses, and it was quite possible for them to make out the sounds even from above ground. We can go now, Roger told her as the group gathered in the chamber. We'll take the eastern passage. Lyra nodded and stepped forward. A second later, the door above opened and something huge and black jumped through. The silence in the den switched to chaos within seconds as one after another, huge corrupted wolves fell into the chamber. Run! Lyra yelled at the rogues as she reached for her weapons. Roger and several of the other rogues shifted, getting into a fighting stance. When the corrupted wolves rushed at them, they met them midway. What followed was a horror show. The corrupted wolves tore through the rogues like tigers playing with kittens. Lyra quickly realized that the entire pack would be massacred if this continued. Turning back, she found the group of rogues cowering together, looking on in horror as their warriors fell one by one. She singled out the female from earlier. Go, she told her. Take everyone and go. I'll hold them back. Eh? Alone? She stuttered. I've got this. If you stay here, you'll die. Go now. The female nodded, then led the group towards the eastern passage. Fortunately, none of the monster wolves tried to go after them. Lyra's gun emptied quickly, forcing her to switch to her daggers. There were still a few rogues standing, but it did not take long for all of them to turn into bodies strewn on the ground. Lyra clenched her teeth as she faced 4 remaining wolves alone. No matter what, this could not be the end. Lyra felt as if her body was on autopilot as she faced the wolves. They surrounded her, their fangs exposed and their growls rumbling through the air. All things considered, she looked like dead meat. There were 4 of them, and then there was her, armed with a pair of daggers. A few months ago, she would not have survived this. Regardless, she would have fought with everything she had. Now, she had the advantage of having unlocked her abilities and receiving hours of training from the best instructors in the kingdom. She had never imagined that she would find herself in such a battle all alone without backup, but there was no turning back. Remembering how her mental powers had helped her in her fight against Beryl, she used them to try and control the wolves. To her relief, they worked fine. Using them, she manipulated the wolves' movements, allowing her to evade most of their attacks. But while this worked, she quickly got tired, which affected her ability to calculate her actions. She finally managed to bring down 3 of the wolves, allowing her to fully focus on the last one. But just when she thought she had a chance, more wolves appeared at the opening. The scent of blood had drawn them, and now Lyra found herself facing 5 new ones. Until that point, she had believed that she could fight them off. But now, with her body tired and her strength drained, she could not think of a way. Her mind raced. She would definitely lose if she stayed and fought. But she could not just stand and wait for death. Roger had mentioned an eastern passage. Since the others had taken it, she could take the western passage. She had no idea where it led, but it would take the wolves away from the rogues and maybe, just maybe, she would find a way out. Wherever the passage led, it was her only option now. She started backing away, but as if the wolves could read her mind, they jumped into the chamber surrounding her. Number. What should I do? She asked Ray frantically. As if her fatigue wasn't enough, a strange tingling developed in her limbs. She looked down at her limbs, panicking. This was not the time for her body to start playing tricks on her. Seconds later, the tingling intensified into something much different. She felt a surge of energy rushing through her body, filling her with new power. It was a feeling she had never experienced before. And soon enough she knew why. As she watched her arms in confusion, she saw fur sprout on the back of her hands. Her eyes stung, her bones ached, and her body started stretching. Am I shifting? She asked Ray in wonder. Yes, Ray replied. It's finally happening. Lyra yelped in pain as her spine cracked and she found herself with her hands on the ground. After that, everything happened in a blur of pain. Her clothes ripped and her weapons fell to the ground as she took on her wolf. She kept growing and growing, filling the small chamber. She knew there was something abnormal about it when her shoulders pushed against the roof of the chamber and her head pushed through the trapdoor. How could she be so big? The wolves, seeing her impressive form, started backing away in fear. There wasn't much space left in the opening, so they tried to scamper down the underground tunnels. With one swipe of her paw, Lyra caught them and sent them flying into the wall. Her hit was so powerful that a couple did not get off the ground. By the time the others collected themselves, she had repositioned herself to block the only way that led towards the passages. Left with no escape route, the 4 wolves rushed at her. But with her size, speed, and power, they were no match for her. The best they could do was try to attack her legs, but she was too quick. Barely a minute later, all of their bodies were strewn on the ground of the chamber. The entire place stunk of blood and death. Lyra climbed through the opening and patrolled the surrounding area. Her sight and sense of smell seemed to be 100 times better, but she did not hear or smell anything. I don't think there are any more, Ray told her. Let's go back and report this. Yes. They should go back. But instead of starting off towards the palace, Lyra kept looking. The power rush was replaced by a burning need to seed. She kept walking around the area sniffing for any living creature. Lyra, Ray called, sensing the change in her. What are you doing? Lyra did not respond. Instead, she locked in a scent and started following it frantically, moving in the opposite direction of the palace. After a few more attempts to reach her, Ray realized that Lyra was unresponsive. She was agitated and her mind seemed to be set on one thing of finding prey. Feeling that she was out of control, Ray tried to reach out for Julian's wolf. There was nobody else she could reach, and she had never sensed any hostility from him, so he was likely to help. After a few unsuccessful tries during which she grew more and more frantic as Lyra got farther away from the palace, She was able to connect to him. Quickly, she let him know that Lyra was out of control and in danger, and to ask Julian to come and get her. The day after the engagement ceremony, Julian held a meeting with alphas from packs around the kingdom to discuss the issue of the corrupted wolves. He had kept the matter confidential until then, while he tried to gauge the extent of the problem. While there had been no incident reported in any of the packs, his investigations showed that there was a huge presence of the corrupted wolves, and it would only be a matter of time before they became a menace to the kingdom. To make sure it did not get to that, he had to alert all alphas of the looming danger and create strategies to flush out the corrupted wolves and deal with them before they became a public menace. "This is surprising news," Alpha Black said, after Julian was done with his briefing. "I don't think any of us have had any sightings of tainted wolves in our territories." "Your Majesty, is there a possibility you received the wrong information?" Julian pinned the other male with a steely gaze. "Are you suggesting that I would call this meeting without fact-checking my sources?" "Of course not," Alpha Black said, looking at some of the other alphas. "I just think it would be impossible for such a problem to go unnoticed by all of us. Or, has anyone had any reports of corrupted wolves in their packs?" The alphas exchanged looks, many of them shaking heads. Of course, none of them had come across corrupted wolves, otherwise the entire kingdom would be aware of the issue. Julian was glad that it seemed that the corrupted wolves had not shown anywhere else besides the royal forest. "What are you driving at, Alpha Black?" Julian asked. "Do you suggest that we sit like ducks and wait for the attacks to start before we can take action?" "Oh no," Alpha Black said. "I just think we have many other issues to deal with, rather than spending our time on something that probably doesn't exist." "It sounds to me like you don't want us to do anything about it," Julian said. "Maybe you are the one behind the corrupted wolves." Alpha Black frowned. "What, Your Majesty? Why would you say that? I would never do something like that." Julian got up from his seat and looked down at the group of alphas. "Now that I think of it, this could be an inside job. I fought one of those wolves myself in the royal forest. My patrol guards have evidence of their presence, and yet they seem to be well hidden and well controlled. Whoever is behind this knows what they are doing, and they are waiting for the right time to strike. And here is Alpha Black, wanting us to do nothing about it." Alpha Black shook his head, looking a bit panicky. "Your Majesty, you misunderstand me. I did not know you faced one yourself. In that case, you are right. We should do everything to tackle this problem once and for all." Julian leveled a hard look at him. "You had better not be in collusion with witches or anyone who could be behind this." It was the first time he had made any indication that he suspected Alpha Black of colluding with enemies of the kingdom. Rather than keep playing a game of cat and mouse, he wanted the other male to know that he was on his case, and he would catch him if he made even one wrong step. Anyon, who poses a threat to the security of this kingdom, will pay 100-fold. "Of course, Your Majesty," Alpha Black said, his tone cooling off. He looked away from Julian, as if afraid that the king's gaze would uncover all his secrets. Seeing his reaction, Julian was more convinced that Alpha Black not only knew something about the corrupted wolves, but also might be involved in their presence. If that was true, it would be treason of the highest order, and Black would pay with his life. Since Julian had made the issue public, he expected that Alpha Black would rush to cover his tracks. During this time, Julian would watch him even more closely. After putting the meeting to an end, Julian met with Asher in his office for a briefing. Now that the meeting was done, his mind went back to what had happened the previous night. He had noticed that Lyra had been nowhere to be seen all day. She couldn't have escaped, right? If she went missing, he would have heard about it already. "Where is Lyra?" he asked Asher. "I have not seen her with the other guards today." Asher's brows pulled together. "Didn't you order her to patrol the western border for rogues today? She has been gone since this morning. What? Julian snapped. I gave no such order. Did she say that? He asked, suspecting that she had used that as an excuse to get away. Was she really going to run away from right under his nose? Was she not even a little afraid of him? No, Asher replied. She received the order through a palace official. The servant said that it was an order from you. I gave no such order, Julian said, shooting to his feet. I'm going after her. You are in charge here. Julian left the palace and shifted, running into the royal forest and towards the western border. As he got close to the border, Julian sensed Lyra's strong scent, stronger than ever before, but following it led nowhere besides taking him in circles. Just as he was starting to get frustrated, Yuri let him know that Lyra's wolf had contacted him. When Julian heard that Lyra was in danger, he got more agitated. Luckily, Lyra's wolf provided Yuri with directions, allowing him to track Lyra down quickly after that. When he finally found her, however, he was frozen with shock. Every indication, Yuri, the scent, and his own connection to her confirmed that he had indeed found her. But it was not Lyra. At least not as he knew her. It was the biggest wolf he had ever seen. He was the Lycan King, the alpha of alphas, and even his own size paled in comparison to hers. How? He muttered to Yuri. Ray did mention her size was extraordinary. Yuri provided, but she is just an omega. Julian said, does that look like an omega to you? Yuri asked. No, it didn't. Julian approached carefully, taking in the she-wolf in front of him. Her white coat glittered in the sunlight filtering through the treetops, making her look even more majestic. The energy pulsing off her body was stronger than any he had ever felt before. As he got closer, Lyra's wolf turned towards him. Her eyes were a blazing red, positively glowing. Julian had faced many powerful werewolves before, but none had emanated such menace with a simple look. He never ever cowered in the face of any enemy, but as he faced the majestic she-wolf in front of him, he felt his hackles rise instinctively. Are you afraid? Yuri asked, his tone mocking. Shut up, Julian bit out. Lyra's wolf had said that she was out of control. He would be foolish to not be cautious. Any other werewolf in her state of mind would be dangerous. He did not want to think of what she could do if she went rampant among others. But how was he going to bring her down? Yuri said that even her wolf could not reach her. He had not imagined such a situation, so he had not brought anything he could use to control her. Lyra growled at him, exposing her sharp fangs. Then her shoulders bunched up as she prepared to pounce on him. Julian realized his only option in that moment was to keep her distracted while he asked Asher to bring a tranquilizer. If he got her to chase him around the forest, he could buy time. Just as he was getting ready to take off, though, the she-wolf slouched forward, her big body dropping to the ground. A moment later, Lyra lay in her place in her human form, hunched into herself. Julian shifted instantly and rushed to her, falling to his knees and lifting her in his arms. She looked at him with a confused expression, her eyes glazed. She was not entirely herself. His plan was to knock her out lest she shift again, and bring her back to the palace and have Beryl check her. If you don't want her to go on a killing spree, a sudden voice said to him, mark her right away and complete your bond. Otherwise, she'll go insane and fall into uncontrollable bloodlust. Voices filled with agony and pain filled Lyra's mind. Even after all these years, she recognized them like she had heard them yesterday. The memories from when her pack was afflicted by the mysterious disease played in her brain, like a reel, reminding her of the worst parts of the ordeal. Parents had been forced to watch their children suffer, and vice versa, with no one being able to help the other. People had died in the arms of their loved ones. All hope gone after it became clear that there was nothing anyone could do to stop the ravenous disease from claiming lives. At some point, it had become apparent that the Blue Night Pack had been targeted by witches. The images in her mind moved on to Devon and Allison. She heard the insults he threw her way after finding out she was wolfless, and she felt the hits he landed on her every time he beat her. Images of the two in bed together mocking her flashed through her mind, reminding her of memories she had forcibly hidden in the dark recesses of her mind. And then they moved on to Julian. His cruelty, his coldness, and all the ways he humiliated her. A ball of anger ballooned in her stomach before spreading through her entire body. She had to make them pay. All of them. Everyone who had made her life miserable deserved to die. Everyone who had mocked her, laughed at her, put her down. Everybody who had made her feel that she did not belong. Only by getting rid of them could she be truly free. When she saw Julian in front of her, she knew he had to die. He would be the first to pay for everything, before she could put her thoughts to action. However, her mind descended into darkness. And it all went blank. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself looking up at Julian's face. His brows were knitted together in confusion as he held her in his arms. "Lyra," he called, his voice dotted with worry. "Can you hear me?" Lyra blinked. What had happened? Why was Julian here? The last thing she remembered was being in the rogue's den facing the corrupted wolves. She had gotten rid of them and then, "Lyra, look at me," Julian said. She refocused her eyes to see his face clearly. As she looked at him, she felt her scattered thoughts settling down. She noticed their surroundings. They were in the forest. "You shifted," Ray reminded her, her voice softer than ever. "But you lost your mind right after getting rid of the tainted wolves." "What do you mean I lost my mind?" Lyra asked, panicking. "Had the wolves infected her while she was fighting with them? I could not reach you, and you were out of control," Ray told her. "But you are okay now. I think it might have been an effect of you coming into contact with their bodily fluids. They did not bite you, so I don't think it'll happen again." That did not settle Lyra's worry. What if she lost consciousness again? Her wolf was very powerful. If she had come across some werewolves in that state, she would have massacred them without a second thought. She could not rest easy without knowing for sure that something like that would not happen again. "How can I counter the effects?" she asked Ray. "Is there an antidote?" There was a pause from Ray's side. "Ray," Lyra prompted, "apparently, you have to complete your bond with marking for you to be safe," Ray said. "You should cooperate with Julian." Lyra blinked. What nonsense was that? She refocused on Julian. "Are you in pain?" he asked her. His eyes moved all over her body, checking for signs of injury. That was when Lyra realized that she was naked, and so was he. Why on earth that made her flustered when they had seen each other like this multiple times, she couldn't tell. "No," she replied. It was odd, because she figured she must have quite a few injuries. It must be the adrenaline from everything. Julian stroked her cheek, his touch soft and gentle. "I did not order this," he told her. "I would never send you out here alone." "Why did you come after me?" she asked. "Why wouldn't I? You are my mate, and it's not safe here. Someone wanted you to be harmed and I could not let it happen." Somehow he sounded sincere. Lyra chalked that up to her addled brain. She dropped her eyes. "My wolf says that." She trailed off, not sure how to put it. Knowing him, he would accuse her of trying to seduce him. But if this was the only way to make sure she did not go mad again, "I need to mark you," he said. "It's the only way to stabilize your wolf." She swallowed. So he knew. It was no big deal. They could get this out of the way quite quickly and never talk about it again. This was only for the sake of her safety. Julian held her chin as he dipped his head, bringing his mouth to hers. He kissed her softly, slowly parting her lips. It was quite different from their usual kisses, where he claimed her like he was possessed. His gentle manner set off a series of flutters in her stomach. How deceptive, he must be doing this out of a sense of duty. After all, as the Lichen King, he could not let a dangerous werewolf go back to the palace. He could easily get rid of her, but for some reason, he insisted on keeping her around. He sure was making quite the effort for a she-wolf he considered useless. Julian laid her out on a patch of soft undergrowth and stretched beside her. He peppered kisses on her face while his hand roved her body. Her body, like the traitor, it was swarmed up to his touches, like it had been freezing for ages. Before she knew it, she was burying her hand in his hair and pressing closer to him. The previous night, when he had pulled her to bed before she could tell him that she wanted to reject him, she had told herself that she would allow herself one more time with him. He had been passionate, and she had thought, sadly, that she would never experience something like that again. But just because sex with a fated mate felt like puzzle pieces fitting together did not make up for how he treated her. He kissed her as he entered her, filling her slowly. Lyra gasped into his mouth when he started moving back and forth, his gentle strokes doing wondrous things to her insides. Their hands were entwined above their heads as their bodies moved together in sync. When he moved his lips from her lips to her throat, she threw her head back to give him access. He teased her with open kisses and little bites that drove her crazy before finally extending his fangs and sinking them into the juncture of her neck and shoulder. The pain was mixed with a heady, dizzying rush. The connection between them had always been there, but now it felt like they were no longer two different entities, but one meshing into each other until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. She climaxed at the same time and he came right after. Even after that, he did not let go of her, keeping his arms around her body as they lay on the forest floor. As her body came down from the high, Lyra felt her mind was clearer than before, with no lingering fogginess. "I'm good now," she told him. "How did you know that would work?" Julian's eyes moved past her and fixated on something behind her. Frowning, Lyra turned to check. Her eyes widened when she saw a red-headed female bound to a tree and gagged facing them. Who is that?" Lyra asked, looking away from the female's flushed face and to Julian,